Speak on the show 2021, episode 16. Agree to disagree. Critical race theory. Facts versus versus talking points. Undervalued, and the mind, body, and soul segment. I'm trying to get right, y'all. Y'all ready? Let's go. Good morning, good morning, good morning. First and foremost, giving honor to God who allows me to come at you in this manner on a weekly basis. I'm back, y'all. Took a week off. 55. Number 55 was last week. It very uneventful, real slow pace, just laid back, did a little something. Good morning, Maurice Wigfall. Appreciate the support, my brother. Appreciate the support. Took a week off. Just wanted to unwind a little bit, get back to the mental mindset and everything like that. But we got a good show for you today. Let's go and get these formalities out the way, and we're going to go ahead and go from there. rwcoolings.com. That's the website. Go there. Get all the information you want, all the information you need. All the links are there. Follow, share. That's what we're going to do today. We following, and sharing. That's what we're going to do today, all right? Appreciate the support. Michelle Long, appreciate the support. Thanks for tuning in. Brenda Gray, good morning. Appreciate the support. Thank you for tuning in. My man, Brian Hoodie, appreciate the support. Thanks for tuning in. So on wcoolings.com, we're also broadcasting live on Facebook, YouTube right now. Also, you can go after the show and download the audio on Spreaker.com or Apple iTunes. They're available there. So you can go there, download, and, listen without seeing all this if you want to, if you choose to. It's up to you. Good morning, April Weed, and appreciate the support, sis. Appreciate the support. I'm tongue-tied again. Don't you call me out either. Don't call me out. Call in number 844-904-2665. That's 844-904-2665. No matter what the situation is, let your voice be heard. If you got something to say, all we ask is say what you mean and mean what you say if you decide to call in. That's all. It don't take much. Say what you mean what you say. No matter what the situation is, let your voice be heard. I'm trying to get back used to this, a week off. Trying to play with these dials and everything, make sure everything's coming in clear. So I'm trying to work with that. So, the show today is going to touch on some things that we've been talking about for a while. But I think it's some things we need to get into so people have an understanding of some of the things that are going on. Now, I wasn't on right after, the presidential 100-day, when he did the 100-day address. Usually it's the, State of the Union, but he did it after the 100 days. And I wasn't on, and there was a lot of conversation going on about what was said, who said what, all these different things that Joe Biden has in play. And then there was the rebuttal by South Carolina, I think he's Senator Tim Scott. And let's go ahead and transition into disagree to disagree. Let me just start off with this. I love my people. I love people as a whole. Let's just be honest here. I love people as a whole, but I love my people because we tend to find any reason and every reason to disagree with each other. I love my people because we got all kind of different insights and everything like that. But Tim Scott came out after Joe Biden did his address, and he made a statement that everyone hung on. And the statement he made was, America, the United States of America, let me get it right, is not a racist country. Now, looking back, not too long ago, before that, about a year ago, something like that, Tim Scott also made the statement that he's been pulled over, racially profiled, different things like that. At the time when they were talking about police reform and things like that, he was one of the ones that was supposed to be on the Republican side structuring, the police reform bill and everything like that. He was going to have input and say hi, basically. But then he came fast forward to now, and he did his rebuttal saying the United States of America is not a racist country. Now, I'm not going to sit here because I've seen a lot of people calling him Uncle Tim, Uncle Tom, sellout, all the different verbiages, people use at times when they don't agree with something someone else said that looks like us. I've said it before and I'll say it again. We got to do better. We can agree to disagree without the name calling, without the, the normal Uncle Tom sellout. Come on. I mean, we talk about these things. We have people on the other side of the aisles they call Republicans and, Democrats. I don't get into the political aspect of who you are. I want to know who you are as an individual. I don't care what political party you're associated with. What are your views on life and the way things are going and how people are being treated when we talk about racial discrimination and police brutality, all these different things? How do you feel about them truly? Not a political party part, but for you as a whole. And that's why I say I love my people, because we can, at sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes we can become chameleons and we can fit into the environment that we want to fit into when it's convenient for us to fit into it. You talk about Tim Scott, you talk about Candace Owens, you talk about Vernon Jones, which I'm going to get into in a few minutes. You talk about all these people. You got to talk about Clarence Thomas. You talk about Colin Powell. You talk about all these people that are on the other side of the aisle that consider themselves to be Republicans. And somehow, some way, because we don't agree with their political affiliation, we take that to the point of not agreeing with them as being a person of color. And what bothers me about it more than anything is when we get into the name throwing back and forth. If you don't agree, you just don't agree. If you don't agree with something the person said, then let's talk about what they said and what your facts are compared to their facts, and let's go on from there. But this finger pointing and calling people names and all these different things that we can think of that come out when we don't tend to agree with somebody, we got to do better. We got to do better in the point of thinking and understanding that everyone's experiences are different, no matter who you are, no matter what color you are. Tim Scott mentioned, as I just mentioned, that he had been pulled over by police at least 18 times or something in his life or whatever, and he felt he was racially profiled and everything like that. I'm cool with that. That's his experience. But don't downplay your experiences in one aspect and then upplay the lack of others' experiences when you want to go with a political party. That's where my problems come in, because the bottom line is this. If you weren't a senator, if you weren't a congressman, if you weren't someone that's high visibility in the political aspect, you would not pick and choose which times you decide to enlighten other folks on your experiences as being a Black man in this country. We all have experiences, whether you're Black, white, Asian, whatever you are. We all have our own experiences, but at the end of the day, our experiences don't define us. They're a part of us. And when they're a part of us, don't be afraid to tell your story in its truth. This is where my problem comes in, and we agree to disagree. And what we need to do is step back for a minute when we see these things and when we see these people get in front of a microphone and say something that is, in your opinion or my opinion, totally outlandish, because we know what our experiences are, and get to a point where we start calling names. It's just like when we go back to when Joe Biden was running. Morning, Melvin Jackson. Appreciate the support, bro. When Joe Biden was running and he told Charlemagne in an interview when they were talking about voting and why they should vote for him, he said, if you don't vote for me, you're not Black. And people went uproar. People went crazy. What is he talking about? What is he talking about? I'm not Black because I don't vote for Joe Biden and all this. Well, people took it and they ran with it because it was a talking point to make it seem like Joe Biden was taking Black people for granted. I'm not saying he was right in what he said, and I've said that before. However, we do it ourselves to each other. Tim Scott, perfect example. Because of what he said, sell out, all these different things. Candace Owens, I can't defend a lot of things she says because the bottom line is what and who she was defended by when she was a young girl as far as a discrimination case by the NAACP. And then when anything happens to someone of color by police brutality, case in point, George Floyd, Ma'Khia Bryant, all these different people that things happen to, she always takes the other side. It has nothing to do, in my opinion, with her, how she really sees things. It has to do with her pandering to the people that she wants to pander to. She's looking for them to support her in anything. She don't care about the people of color. She's pandering and going against everything that happens to us to pander to a certain demographic. Because if you look at it and you pay attention, she's talking about running for some type of office. That's where it comes into play. So the best way to get into that nook is to go against the people and the experiences that you know are true and take the opposite side. The only reason I bring this up this morning is because we got to do better with how we react to things that happen. We got to get out of our feelings to the point of just pointing fingers and talking about sellout and Uncle Tom, Uncle Tim, all these different things, and look at it in the aspect and receive it from the person it's coming from as that's who they are. You're not going to change them. And we always talk about when something goes wrong with them and the people turn their back on them, they'll be coming back. You know, everybody's like, oh, they're not invited to the barbecue or they're not invited, you know, that kind of thing. Jokingly, I'm cool. But when we totally tear down someone just because of their opinion, we got some work to do within ourselves. We got to change the narrative about how we look at things. We got to change the narrative about how we feel about each other. And overall, accept people's opinions for what they are, whether you agree with them or not, and get to a happy medium to understand that your experience and my experiences, they may be different experiences, but I need to understand and take into account your experiences as well as my experiences. There's some type of level playing field there, but that's where we have to come to a happy medium. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. We got to get better, y'all. We got to get better. Rain Martinez, good morning. Loving the shirt. Appreciate it. Appreciate the support. Shirts are online also, rwcoolins.com. Click the merchandise. Shirts are available there. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Appreciate the support. So let's go ahead and get into this critical race theory. And the reason I brought that up is we're going to lead into some things here because this is going to be a little lesson today. We're going to get into a little lesson because when we talk about race, a lot of people are pushed off about it. But I think people need to understand when you hear these things, critical race theory, 1619 Project, most people that are against them only hear the talking points of the people who don't want it to happen rather than listening to the facts of what it's all about. And this is what we're going to do today. Critical race theory, what it is and what it isn't. Now, this is from CNN, Faith Karima. And critical race theory, it's a concept that's been around for decades and that seeks to understand and address inequality and racism in the United States. The term also became politicized and has been attacked by its critics as a Marxist ideology that's a threat to the American way of life. Basically, anytime you say critical race theory, people are in an uproar, depending on what side of the aisle you're on, depending on what your experiences are. But let's get into this. What is critical race theory? Critical race theory recognizes that systemic racism is part of American society and challenges the beliefs that allow it to flourish. Critical race theory is a practice. It's an approach to grappling with a history of white supremacy that rejects the belief that what's in the past is in the past, and that the laws and systems that grow from that past are detached from it. And this was the definition given by Kimberly Crenshaw. She's a founding critical race theorist and a law professor who teaches at UCLA and Columbia University. Now, let me just caveat this real quick. This critical race theory, and I think we'll get into it, is done by law people, law personnel, lawyers, judges. This is all the people that came up with this critical race theory. And it goes back way before just recently when we're talking about it. If I remember in here, it says W.E.B. Du Bois. Dubois, I can't remember how you pronounce it, but he was involved in it. There's been a lot of people involved in it through the years. And it's become a hot topic now only because when you talk about critical race theory and putting it into the conversation per se, or putting it in an education per se, people get offended by it because they think you're trying to change the history of the United States. But what I would say, and what most of these lawyers would say, is that the critical race theory is a part of the fabric of the United States of America, because the things that were implemented during slavery, during those times, even before slavery, with people of color, not only blacks, Native Americans, Asians, all the critical race theory comes into play where it's all inclusive of people of non-color. I mean, people of color by people of non-color, as far as the white supremacy mentality. So let's get into this. Critical race theorists believe that racism is an everyday experience for most people of color, and that a large part of society has no interest in doing away with it because it benefits white elites. While the theory was started as a way to examine how laws and systems promote inequality, it has since expanded. Critical race theory attends not only to law's transformative role, which is often celebrated, but also to his role in establishing the very rights and privileges that legal reform was set to dismantle. Case in point, when you talk about police reform, when you talk about the justice system, all these things that we're talking about trying to reform, when you hear these conversations about that, are based off of lawyers' opinions of this critical race theory. Like American history itself, a proper understanding of the ground upon which we stand requires a balanced assessment, not a simplistic commitment to jingoistic, sorry about that, accounts of our nation's past and current dynamics. So this goes back through history where we're looking at the things and how we got to where we're at now with the systems that were put in place then and how they're affecting the race relations at this point. Now, who came up with the idea? Ms. Crenshaw is one of the founding scholars and hosted a workshop on the critical race theory movement in 1989. But the idea behind it goes back much further to the work of civil rights activists such as W.E. Du Bois, Fannie Lou Hamer, and Pauli Murray. Everything builds on what came before. The so-called American dilemma was not simply a matter of prejudice, but a matter of structured disadvantages that stretched across American society. Crenshaw said she and others took up the task of exploring the role that law played in establishing the very practices of exclusion and disadvantage. Let me read that again, because I think it's something that is very important when you talk about this. Crenshaw said she and others took up the task of exploring the role that law played in establishing the very practices of exclusion and disadvantage. Some of the theory's earliest origins can be traced back to the 1970s, when lawyers, activists, and legal scholars realized the advances of the civil rights era of the 1960s, had stalled, according to the book Critical Race Theory: An Introduction. So there's actually a book on critical race theory that you can go read if you choose to, which we're going to get into why people don't choose to. You know, I'm not going to keep going through this. The more I read it, let's just talk about how it's evolved up to this point over the years. The theory has a passionate group of followers who are mostly academics. It has inspired at least a dozen books, more than 250 law review articles, and several conferences. At this point, it is wider than any specific discipline or school of thought. It isn't even exclusively American. That's what Ms. Crenshaw said. The concept has taken on new urgency since the killings of last year of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and other African Americans by police officers led to a national reckoning on race. I pause when we talk about the critical race theory, because it's just like anything else that we talk about when it comes to race. And let's just be totally honest here. Good morning, cuz. Appreciate the support from Miami. Love y'all. Happy Mother's Day. Oh, we'll get into that a little later on too. I didn't forget about y'all mothers out there. But as I mentioned, when we get into conversations about race, there's this taboo somewhere created by somebody that it's not a conversation that needs to be had, because if you have an honest conversation about race and you give the history about race relations, you talk about the critical race theory and all the things that revolve around that, because let me clear this up as well. When we talk about racism and race doesn't just go back to slavery. Let's just be totally honest about this. Racism just doesn't start at slavery. The plight of the black man does not start at slavery. However, in the United States of America, the plight of the black man and slavery is what this country was built on, is what this country was manufactured on. It's what this is in the fabric of this country. And until we get to a point in this country where we address and recognize the things that go on today that are still consistent with things that went on back then we may be able to come to some type of understanding and some type of medium. But until then, and when you have people like the ones I mentioned before who don't want to get into the conversations, or they decide, or those that decide to put a person of color in front of a microphone to mention that the United States of America is not racist, or there is not racism and things like this, then the people that listen to those comments take it to be true without understanding. Well, let me put it in this aspect. You have people that'll watch Tim Scott stand in front of a podium because he's a politician, and they'll listen to his stories and they'll listen to what he has to say about racism in America and his experiences and how it's not a racist country and different things like this. And the people who support him will listen to that and take it as face value. But what they won't do, and what they choose not to do, is sit and talk to the so-called African-American black friend that they have to truly get an understanding of what racism they've experienced, how it's affected them as far as what they do in their daily lives, because no one wants to have that conversation face to face. They'll take it from someone standing behind a podium. They'll take it from someone giving a speech at some type of Black History Month event. But rather than someone taking the time to sit down with their so-called black friend and have the honest conversation of what their experiences are, so they can get a better understanding of what racism does and how it affects them and the things that they may have not been able to accomplish because of racism, they'll listen to someone that they've never met, that they never will meet, and is just standing in front of a podium because he has the microphone at that time to tell the story that he wants to tell to the masses. And they take that as truth. He who speaks the loudest is not always right. He who has the microphone is not always right. Hey, I'm not always right. I got a microphone. I'm not always right. But these are the things that happen when we talk about race, critical race theory, racism, police brutality, justice reform. When we talk about all these things, the first thing you hear when you talk about police brutality or police reform is when something happens to a person of color, the first thing they want to say is, why didn't they comply? Well, why didn't they comply? Yeah, you can use that in most cases. But then when you see people of non-color slapping police, throwing things at police, and never get shot, never get beat down, you never hear anybody say, well, if he would have only complied. You know why nobody says why if he would have only complied? Because he's still alive. He's still breathing. He's still able to go to court and face his consequences for the crime he may have committed. Those are the differences that no one wants to look at and no one wants to pay attention to when you talk about these things. You know, when I talk about race, at times, especially on this show, I try my best not to get to the point, and it's not that I pick and choose my words. Don't get me wrong. But I don't want people who know me for a long period of time to look at me and think I've become radicalized, think that I don't like, that I'm anti-white. None of that is the truth, because if you know me, you know me. However, When we as a people see these inconsistencies around us as we get older and we start recognizing these things because of what's happening on a daily basis, not to everyone, but a certain demographic of people, it brings out something in each one of us to say, wait a minute. Because what we do is we sit back and we reflect on our lives, and as I mentioned one time before, maybe I've been sheltered up to this point. Maybe my life has been at a point where I've been sheltered, where I haven't had to recognize these things because of the circles I travel in. But I always mention to people, I could have been George Floyd. I could have been Trayvon Martin. Not because of my circumstances, but because of being a Black person. And until we get to the point of understanding that and sit down and have these conversations honestly, because you can have white friends, you can have Black friends, but until you have that conversation honestly, it's not going to change anything. Because what we see, and I don't like to do the comparisons, but many times we see interviews, we see documentaries, we see all these different things about Holocaust survivors and how the Holocaust was so wrong. And as I mentioned, I put this disclaimer out, I'm not trying to do no comparisons because the Holocaust was tragic, something that should not have happened. But if we can feel that strongly about the Holocaust and the after effects for years and years and years, how come we don't feel that strongly about slavery and racism and the effects that it has for years and years and years? You can't tell me that it's not a pick and choose type thing. I truly believe in my heart of hearts that everyone has some type of good in them. But you can't tell me that some people don't have more hate in their heart than they have good in their heart. Will you ever be able to change their mentality? Probably not. But the only way those changes will be able to be made is through conversation. And one thing that we don't do when it comes to race relations is have honest conversations. Honest conversations. You look back, you think back every year. And I've said this many times, and I'm going to say it again because it stands true. Every year that Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday comes around, or Black History Month comes around, we hear all these people, no matter who they are, whatever walk of life they are, talk about and re-quote his quotes consistently every year, depending on the situation. You will hear someone mention a quote or a speech by Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. But in the same time, once that month is over or once that speech is over, they go back to saying racism is not real. Racism is not rampant in the United States of America. Justice reform, police reform, they don't need to happen. But if you're going to quote the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and what he stood for, which he was vilified, let's just be real. But if you're going to quote him and what he stood for, then you need to open your eyes to understand that what he stood for then is still happening now. It's not quoting someone who did so much by convenience. We have minimized as a whole, when I say we as a people, have minimized the legacy of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. from a man and his focus and his movement and everything he did to quotes and speeches. And I'll stand by that till the day I die. That's what we've done. We've minimized him. You can say the same thing about Jesus if you really pay attention, but I'm not going to get into that today because that might ruffle some feathers. We have minimized him to quotes and speeches because those same people that are quoting him aren't willing to do the work to have his legacy continue on to fix the problems. Facts and talking points. Facts versus talking points. I watched the interview the other day. It goes back to what I'm talking about. It was Vernon Jones, who used to be a Democrat, now he's a Republican, down in Georgia. He was on a show with Malcolm Lamont Hill on Black News Tonight. And they were talking about critical race theory. And as more they talked about, the more you realize that Vernon Jones has no idea what critical race theory is. However, he came with every talking point you can think of when it comes to race and racism. And when Mark Lamont Hill asked him during the interview what critical race theory is, this was his response to what critical race theory is. From what I just told you about, this is what Vernon Jones expressed it to be. He said, well, I think it's different depending on who is teaching it and how they're teaching it. I think you can agree with that. We were taught that Christopher Columbus discovered America. Well, you and I both know that Christopher Columbus got lost. People were already living here, but there are those who are using their own ideology and their own party affiliation to go to the extreme, and that's what I'm trying to address here. Now, I don't know what that had to do with critical race theory, but this is what Mark Lamont Hill responded back. He pushed him to give a straight answer, using creationism and sexual addiction as examples. For example, this is what Mark Lamont Hill said. For example, if I said I was against creationism, I would say that creationism is X, Y, and Z. If I said I was against the teaching of sex education, I would say sex education is X, Y, and Z. What is critical race theory? He asked him again. Jones again avoided answering the question. Well, first of all, again, I can tell you, but it's left up to you to understand. I can't make you understand. The fact of it is that critical race theory, even on its basis, should not be taught in our schools, period. Talking point. No understanding of what it is, talking point. So Hill pushed him again. And this is when he got agitated. All right. And then they got going back and forth, one talking over the other and everything like that. And this is where Vernon Jones resorted from trying to give facts that he thought about and talking points to name calling, as I mentioned before. And this is what he said. He told him, said, Hill again pushed for an answer, which seemed to agitate Vernon Jones, who followed the GOP media playbook of destroying an interview. Jones told Hill he doesn't know what critical race theory is, talked over Hill when he tried to respond, and eventually told Mr. Hill he was as dumb as two left shoes. There we go. And Hill, in response, this is what he said. You're not going to come on my show and call me dumb. What I will tell you is that critical race theory is a theory that actually emerged out of critical legal studies. It is a theory that makes an attempt to understand the law through the lens of race, and it's founded on some fundamental presumptions. One is the intractability of race and racism, meaning it's intractable. It's an intractable problem in America, and that we have to use the lens of race to make sense of things. At the end of the segment, Mr. Hill hinted Republicans and Jones love to deflect and distract when they can't or don't want to answer the questions. So it goes back to what I said. When they don't want to talk about it, this is what they do. And I'm not just talking about politicians. I'm talking about people as a whole. You know, everybody's been guilty of this at some time where there's been a conversation. They can't appreciate sport, bro. When they're having a conversation with somebody and they get to a point where they don't understand, they start throwing names out. They start, changing the narrative. And then it becomes a shouting match. This is a person, Mr. Jones, Vernon Jones, who was, like I said, a Democrat. And now he's planning to run as governor for Georgia. You want him as your governor? I mean, you vote for who you want to, but I'm just saying. Faye Jackson, appreciate your support, bro. Happy Mother's Day weekend. Yeah, I'll get to that in a few. Give me my time. Give me my time. I haven't forgot about the mothers. Talking points versus facts. All I ever ask of anyone that I'm speaking to, give me the facts. Don't try to baffle me with BS. Just give me the facts. Let me digest it, no matter how bad it may be. But don't give me something that is totally way out there that has nothing to do with the facts of what we're talking about. Undervalued. Let's go to this next one. Now, this one here, when I found this is where, when they talk about racism and how it's not affecting people and there is no racism and stuff, this is where it's implanted, it's in the system, and it's within the people within the system, where people that work in certain systems feel comfortable enough to do these type of things because there's no recourse. There's no recourse. There's no accountability per se. Now, this is dealing with housing, home ownership. A new study shows anti-Black racism is costing American homeowners hundreds of thousands of dollars. For every 1% increase of Black residents in a zip code, home values decreased by $2,581 is what the data shows. So if you live in okay, let's start here. For every 1% increase of Black residents in a zip code, home values decrease by $2,581. That discrimination hurts every homeowner within the zip code. And racism hurts the economy at large, costing the United States more than $16 trillion in the past 20 years. All because the undervaluing of African-American Black homeowners who are either trying to sell or trying to purchase. Real estate company Cleaver collected data on home values across the U.S. looking at patterns across predominantly Black and white neighborhoods. The data shows that homes in majority Black neighborhoods are being massively undervalued, which has ripple effects across the larger U.S. economy. Let's just be honest here. Gentrification is the word they put on this when it started happening. You had majority, predominantly Black neighborhoods that their homes may not have been in the greatest shape, but they were way, way undervalued. And because the homeowners were either parents, grandparents of our generation, we decided to sell the homes, and they undervalued them at hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then you had other folks of non-color move in and buy those homes that were way undervalued, do some modifications here and there, and then you find out that these homes are valued at millions of dollars. We've seen it. Hell, it happened in my hometown, Frederick, Maryland. Saint Street, predominantly Black area. Houses sold, pennies on the dollar. Now they're million dollar homes. Cleaver's data shows that with each 1% increase in the proportion of Black residents in the zip code, home values decrease by approximately $2,581. The racial wealth gap in America is huge and is apparent in all sorts of financial data, from income to net worth to home equity. The study, conducted using data from Realtor.com and Zillow.com, along with the 2019 Census Bureau data, showed a massive disparity between the ability of Black and white Americans to buy homes and see the values of their homes increase. Black Americans also tend to pay more for their mortgages than white Americans. A 2015 study by the Journal of Real Estate Finance and Economics found that Black borrowers paid 0.29% more on a mortgage than a similar white family. Black women are typically charged 0.57% more than white women for a mortgage. When Black Americans sell a home, those homes are often undervalued. Cleaver's data found that the average home in predominantly Black metro areas has an average listing price of $167,508, while the typical home in a white neighborhood has an average listing price of $335,000. Price per square foot also reflects this disparity. Black neighborhoods see a median price per square foot of $115, while homes in white neighborhoods have a median of $193 per square foot. Closing the racial wealth gap would benefit everyone in the United States. Indeed, over the past 20 years, the racial wealth gap has cost the U.S. $16 trillion. Home equity plays a large role in every family's wealth. Cleaver's data points out that every 10% increase in home equity and wealth in housing creates $147 billion in spending. And that's no small amount as the country recovers from one of the worst economic disasters in years caused by the coronavirus pandemic. Many Americans derive a large portion of their net worth from their home. On average, home equity is 28.9% of a family's net worth, according to the Census Bureau. The affordability and value issues that perpetuate the racial home ownership gap also play a big part in the racial wealth gap. Closing that gap could help benefit the country and the housing market as a whole. Now, I know that's a lot of numbers, a lot of things, but at the bottom line, African-American home owners, when they go to sell, their homes are being undervalued as far as what equity is in it. And when they go to buy, prices go up. And some realtors won't even take them to nice neighborhoods to buy homes. Let's just be honest. Certain neighborhoods, they know that they don't take them to. But this story here is what jumped out at me and made me do that research on that. Home valuation jumps by more than $100K after a Black woman removes her family photos and asks a white male friend to sit in on the appraisal. Let me read that one more time. A home valuation jumps by more than $100K after a Black woman removes the family photos and asks a white male friend to sit in on the appraisal. This is what she said. Her name is last name is Duffy. I can't find her name. I'm sorry. But this is what she said. I get choked up even thinking about it now because I was so excited and so happy. And then I was so angry that I had to go through all of that just to be treated fairly. Indianapolis homeowner Carlette Duffy. We're going to call her Mrs. Duffy today. Miss Duffy made the decision to refinance her home located in a Black neighborhood near downtown Indianapolis last year, and had plans to use the equity to purchase her grandparents' home close by in order to fix it up and keep it in the family. Excuse me. When two appraisals came back close to what she bought the home for in 2017, leaving her with little equity, Duffy pushed back without success. The appraisals, watch this now, came back at $125,000 and $110,000. She purchased the home for $100,000 3 years prior. So in 3 years, they're telling her in this appraisal that it only went up. One appraisal said $110,000. One appraisal said $125,000. So with the top end, her only equity she had for 3 years was $25,000. Now, mind you, she did a whole lot of upgrades in this home and everything. $25,000. I want you to remember that. Now, this is what she did. She decided to do her own experiment after she heard someone speak to a community group about discrimination in home appraisals. When she reached out to a third lender for an appraisal, this time she declined to disclose her race and or gender on the application. This is what she did. I took down every photo of my family from my house. I took every piece of ethnic artwork out. So any African artwork, I took it out. I displayed my degrees. I removed certain books. And then she asked a white male friend to sit in on the appraisal after telling the appraisers she would be out of town and that her brother, watch this now, she would be out of town and that her brother would be present for the process. The third appraisal returned in an estimated value of $259,000. Let me say that one more time. The third appraisal, after she took all the pictures down, took all the ethnic artwork down, had her brother per se, that a white friend of hers that she identified as her brother, to the appraisal office. They came back in the third appraisal after the first one and the second one. The first one 125, second one 110. House she bought 3 years ago was $100,000. The third appraisal, after she did all that, $259,000. That's $159,000 difference because she took down pictures of her family and ethnic artwork in her damn house. And we sit back and consistently hear people say that no systems in the United States of America are rigged. There is no racism in the systems, but you see things like this, and the people who sit there and deny it over and over and over again act like this shit never happened. Excuse me, y'all. I know it's Mother's Day's weekend. I'm sorry, Mom. They act like this never happens. Now, this is one incident. How many of them don't we know about? Or how many of them just went on and took the appraisal that they got because they were ready to sell the home and they felt that was the best they were going to do? And then someone came back and tried to debunk what she did. One of the lenders, Teresa Whitehead, CEO of Citywide, a lender Duffy worked with early last year, suggested that the third appraisal's jump in value could potentially be attributed to changes in the mortgage business in the year of the pandemic. So we're not going to go with the fact that you got 3 appraisals. 2 appraisals, I had a black home. It was identified as a black home. I was a black homeowner. You see my pictures, you see my ethnic artwork. 2 appraisals came back well below market. The third appraisal comes back $159,000 more than any of an increase for what I paid for the home. And you don't attribute that to any type of glitch in the system, problem in the system, racism in the system, but you attribute it to the pandemic. $159,000 jump. Now you say what you want. They say HUD is investigating. But then we just have, what's his name? Ben Carson is the HUD secretary, who also said there's no racism in our systems in the United States of America. Ben Carson said this when he was the HUD secretary. But now you got a HUD investigating this. So which one is it, Mr. Carson? Which one is it, Mrs. Whitehead? Which one is it, former President Trump? Which one is it, Tim Scott? Which one is it, Candace Owens? Which one is it, Vernon Jones? Which one is it for all you people who sit there and are racism deniers? No matter what facts are presented to you, which one is it? You can't sit here and continually tell me that these things just happen by chance. We see it, we live it, but when we speak on it, name of the show also, but when we speak on it, it's an issue. And it doesn't help. And I'm just going to say it this way. It doesn't help when you have people of color who have, per se, ascended to the top of the ladder financially, location-wise, position-wise, and all those different things. And because they're here now, they forget everything that ever happened to them down here, or happened to their family members, or happened to people around them. That's a large gap to tell me that what's going on down here, you don't see. And because you're here, you've never experienced it. I don't care if you're Republican. I don't care if you're Democrat. I don't care if you're Asian, Black, white, Puerto Rican, Mexican, whatever nationality you may claim. Racism is alive and well in our systems. Racism will never leave our systems as long as we don't confront the people that are in the systems pushing the racism. We'll never get rid of racism as long as we have people that look like me up there denying the fact that there is not racism in our systems. Come on. OT, you tell the truth. That's the reason I took all my pictures down. I'm not taking my pictures down. I'm not taking my pictures down. Why should I have to take pictures down in my home to get a true value of what my home is worth. That's like telling me that I need to leave my house every day in white paint to put a more of a value on my life. We should not have to go to extremes for equality. We should not have to go to extremes for acceptance. We should not have to go to the extreme as human, breathing, living people for equality, for fair and balanced in anything that goes on in this United States of America or in this world. And don't get me wrong, let me clear this up. The United States of America is not the only place where this racism problem exists. Meghan Markle, ring anybody's bell? That was just at that level. What about at this level? See, we can't overlook the fact that these things happen and act like they're not happening because it either is not affecting me or you feel it's not affecting that black friend that you may have, or that because of what political party you're associated with tells you that it's not true. I just don't understand, and I probably never will. Corporate. It's entrenched. It's entrenched. I probably would never understand, and this is just me, and you take it for what it's worth. There's a lot of things in life that I can say over my life and my travels that I don't like, did not like, don't like, or anything like that. But there's one word that I will not use that was instilled in me as a young man by my mother. Lucy Whedon, shout out, happy Mother's Day, love you. And that's the word hate. I remember saying I hated something one time and she stopped me in my tracks. She said, you can dislike things all you want, but never use the word hate. Hate is such a strong word. Hate hardens your heart. And the other part of that is when you see these people walk around and they talk about, evangelicals and they're they're with the Republican Party and we trust in God and all these different things they talk about, but they still do nothing to change the systems that are in place that promote and encourage racism. So you can't tell me, well, I'm just going to sum it up here. You can't spit in my face and tell me it's raining. Let me say it again. You can't spit in my face and tell me it's raining. Sharon Carroll, tell them, cuz it's ridiculous. Got to stop it now or it will continue and our children's children will have to deal with it down the road. OT. You know what's funny? Not funny, Sharon Carroll. When you say our children's children, this is the same thing our parents were saying. This is the same thing our grandparents were saying. And so on, and so on, and so on. Every generation through our lineage has said the same thing. We're going to do everything we can to make sure our children's children and our lineage and our line won't have to deal with this. You talk about generational wealth. When you talk about generational wealth, how often do you hear, up until recently, Black folks as a whole talking about generational wealth? And when we do talk about it, we talk about the lack of. We don't talk about we have, we talk about the lack of. This is all entrenched in those long-term systemic reasons that the critical race theory is important to be talked about. I mentioned before in one of my mind, body, and soul segments that you can look at a tree and see all the beautiful leaves on that tree. But that beauty only comes from what's being fed through the roots. You can't see the roots, but the roots are what makes that tree beautiful. And if you really think about it, anyone who's ever seen a tree come out of the ground or taken out of the ground, the roots are ugly. But they're the basis of what that tree is about. You have to think about that when you talk about racism, not only in this country, but throughout the world. What can you do? What can we do? What do we need to do? Where do we start? My answer to that, we got to start with us. We got to start with us. We got to start embracing each other rather than tearing down each other. We have to come together as a whole. These little pockets of division and stuff that we do, we got to get better. You can't fight something divided. And the thing that divides us aren't the things about racism and different things. Like, what divides us is the mentality that if I live a certain place, I'm better than someone who lives somewhere else. What divides us is how we feel about someone marrying outside of their race. What divides us is someone who may go to an Ivy League school rather than an HBCU. What divides us are the minuscule things that all deal with opportunities that are presented to you that may not be presented to someone else. Those are the things that divide us as a people. The opportunities that one may have that another one doesn't. And we take those opportunities and use them as fuel within our communities, within ourselves, to develop this hate towards my brother or my sister because their opportunity was better than mine. And now because their opportunity was better than mine, I feel that they think that they're better than me. What is that about? Why do we think that way? It does not make sense. We've gone from the paper bag test, everybody knows what the paper bag test is, to how big your house is test. We've gone from the paper bag test to how much you're making in corporate America. We've gone from the paper bag test to what kind of car you drive. We go from paper bag test to who you're married to. But it's all deeply rooted in the racism aspect of what goes on in this country because we feel, and then when I say we, I say as a whole, and let me pull back from that we. Some of us feel that we have to gravitate to other folks in order to become successful. When the success lies right within our community with the same people you see that look like you every damn day. But we choose not to use that. We choose not to use that. Let's go to this mind, body, and soul segment. I'm going to switch it up a little bit here. Mind, body, and soul. This is the year of taking it one day at a time, self-love, self-care. We just need to take care of each other, take care of ourselves first and foremost. But this quote I found after my birthday this week, I had a conversation with, and I'm just going to call him out, Brian Hoodie. Me and Brian Hoodie, co-worker of mine, had a conversation. And let me get into this. And this is what the quote is. Mind, body, and soul. Don't let your alarm clock be the only reason you wake up. Don't let your alarm clock be the only reason you wake up. That quote's by Ray Lewis. The conversation me and Mr. Hoodie were having dealt with, turning a year older. We were right there together. And he was asking me some questions, how I look at things differently and everything like that. And one of the things I told him was that at times I'm still trying to find out, what is my purpose? What is my why? Why am I still here? What am I supposed to be doing? Not for a legacy, but for impact. And the more we talked about it, the deeper it got. We got into some deep conversation about religion and how we feel about going to church, going to church rather than, you got people that go to church that are in church, but they're not really in church. They're there for the visual so people can say, I seen you in church rather than being there for the message. Not going to get into that, but that's what we talked about. But when you talk about, we got into it and I said, when your alarm clock goes off in the morning, the first thing we should do is thank God that we have the opportunity to see another day, which we do take for granted more often than not. But when that alarm clock goes off and you get up and you go through your normal routine and everything, and it just feels like a routine of what you got to do for the day. But if the reason you're waking up is because the alarm clock went off and you're not waking up because you know that because you heard that alarm clock, you got 24 hours to do something important for that day, to make someone's day, to impact somebody's day, to leave some type of mark on someone, to let them know that it's all worth it. How do we get there? How do we get that back? What do we need to do to see the goodness in what we do every day? And this is in spite of everything going on around us. We have to be thankful for every day that we wake up. And we can't think that we just woke up because the alarm clock went off. I got my alarm clock set for so many times. It goes off at 3, 3:30, 4, 4:35, 5:36, 6:37, because I got to be out the door about 7. But I have set it all these times. And I had to reevaluate, why do I have this alarm clock set so many times to go off? And it's because I've lost my way. I've lost my way to the point of motivating myself to get up every day and do something. Make it count. If your alarm clock is the only reason you wake up in the morning, you need to do some soul searching. You have to have a purpose. You have to have a reason. You have to have a focus. You have to know, and you have to want to get out there and do what you need to do in this world. We always talk about nothing's given to us. We got to do this, we got to do that, and everything like this. But sometimes we talk about it, but we ain't about it. You have to reevaluate where you stand at on certain things, what you need to be involved with. What are you trying to do? I had to reevaluate myself. I come on the radio show. I sit here and I give you guys information about what's going on in the world, what we need to change. What am I doing about it? I can talk about it, but I got to be about it. So when that alarm clock goes off in the mornings from now on, I'm setting it one time, 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock is the time that alarm clock is going to go off from now. And that's the only alarm that will be going off. Because the mindset is, I know it's going to go off at 3:30. I know it's going to go off at 4. I know it's going to go off at 4:30. I'm not going to be late because I'm going to wake up each time to turn it off. But if you get to the mindset that there's one opportunity to hear that alarm clock, turn it off and get up. It's like they always say, when you decide to go into business for yourself or you decide to do something, you have plan A. If you decide to make plan B, you already expect to fail. So all those different times I had that alarm clock set was a coverage for me not to have to get up at the time I should have got up. Not no more. So I tell you that to say this: when your alarm clock goes off, get up. Even if your alarm clock don't go off. When you wake up in the morning, get out the bed. Get out the bed, start moving, put your purpose in focus and make it happen. You got to do it. You got to do it. It's that time. We got a lot of things going on that we all need to be involved in. We all need to be focusing on what our purpose is, and we all need to be starting to strive to do something in this world, not about the legacy, but about the impact. What are you doing? I say that to say all this. Strap in. Put on your seatbelts. Speak on the show is about to go to a whole nother level right now. A whole nother level. I'm going to talk about it, and it's time to be about it. We got some work to do, y'all. I'm pulling the sleeves up. Well, I got on short sleeves today, but I'm putting gloves on. It's time. It's time to get back to doing what I know I can do. Because I got comfortable. I got complacent with just being in the flesh. It's time to do that work, y'all. I hope y'all with me, because it's about that time. It's about time for us to get started. It's time for us to make change. It's time for us to stop talking about it and start being about it. Get on board. Speak on the show is taking it to another level. Let's go ahead and wrap this thing up for today. Mother's Day weekend. Mother's Day weekend. Let me tell y'all something. When it comes to mothers, I say it this way. You get one mother, one father. While you're here, you better appreciate it. While they're here and while you're here, you better appreciate them, because when they're gone, they're gone. And I don't want to put no doom and gloom on it. Fake Jack, so you getting up at 4 a.m. to do what? That's 3 hours to prepare. Work out, bro. Got to work out. Got to get my focus back. You know what I used to do back in the day? Get up, get the workout in. Why am I explaining this to you? I'm a grown man. Get up, work out, get myself together, get to work when I'm supposed to. But as I was saying about Mother's Day, Fake Jackson always got to give me a hard time. Mother's Day, appreciate them while you have them here. Give them the flowers while they're here. You know, mothers carry us for 9 months. And sometimes we tend to not appreciate them for everything they bring to our lives. You know, I can truly say from my perspective, and I think all of us, most of us can say that we have or have had a praying mother that has helped us through more situations than we care to talk about. Mother's Day is a day of celebration, but it's just like I always say about Valentine's Day. It shouldn't be a one-day celebration. Appreciate your mothers every day. Call your mothers, you know, it don't have to be every day, but just call them, just say, hey. And how often do we call them and just say thank you? Not for what you're going to do, but for everything you've already done. For all the mothers out there, I love y'all. For all my aunts, I had to put them in the equation. On my aunts on both sides of the aisle, you know, the Whedon side, and the Gray side, and you know, I love all y'all. Y'all are very special to me. You helped raise me and made me the man I am today. When it comes to Mother's Day, it's sentimental. It's sentimental because as much as we may have our own trials and tribulations in our relationships with the women we're with, married to, divorced from, or anything like that, our mothers have been that rock that has stood strong for us through no matter what we've gone through. We love y'all. We appreciate y'all. And without y'all, who would we be? Y'all shaped us, y'all molded us, you nurtured us, and taught us how to love. Let's just be real. Mothers have taught us how to love. Love up on them, y'all. Love up on them, appreciate them, and never take them for granted. Never take them for granted. And don't just let Mother's Day be the time that you buy your mother a meal or take her out or give her flowers or tell you how much you appreciate her. Those are the things we got to get better at. Those are the things. With text messaging and things like that now, send a message every day. Just say, hey, just thinking about you. Love on them, y'all. Love on them. And for those who have had mothers pass away, Pray on it. Know that she's still with you. Know that she still loves you. And know that deep in your heart, no matter where you go, no matter what you do, she may not be here in the flesh, but she's still here in the spirit. As long as you carry your heart, she's going to be there. Love up on them, y'all. Love up on them. It's just one of those days that I get sentimental about when you talk about Mother's Day. Let's go ahead and wrap this up. I'll be back again next week. We're going to give you some more information. And like I said, strap it on. Strap on that seatbelt because it's about to be a bumpy ride. I got some guests. I already got some things lined up. One of the things we're going to be talking about, a lot of people ain't going to want to hear this, but I got some pastors that I want to bring on here. And the reason I'm bringing them on here is I want to talk about not just religion, but I want to talk about the deep down aspects of who we are, what we're about, and the pastor's aspect of where we need to be. Because we have to remember, even though they're a pastor, they're still a human being. They're still a human being. And as much as you go to your pastor with your worries and your cares and what's going on with you, the question I'm going to ask is, who do they go to? Who do they talk to other than God here in the flesh? I'm going to go ahead and sign off here. Love yourself. Love one another. Keep your head up. Oh, hold on for a minute. I'd be remiss if I didn't do this. I want to also thank everyone for that birthday shout outs, birthday Facebook posts, text, phone call, however you sent it to me. I appreciate it. I truly appreciate it. I didn't put it on anything on Facebook. I kind of stayed away from that, during my birthday and everything. I did like everybody that said happy birthday, but I truly appreciate everybody acknowledging me on my birthday. It was a milestone and it really made me reflect on things. And that's what we've been talking about today. It's about to get bumpy, y'all. It's about to take it to a whole nother level. So anytime you get up on the East Coast at 7, you're out there doing your thing at 7 o'clock in the morning and you hear that, the little change in the atmosphere or whatever, just know Collins done got out of bed. He done got up. It's about that time. It's about that time. I appreciate y'all. As I said, love yourself, love one another, keep your head up, and most definitely keep your faith in God. I love y'all, and I'll see y'all again next week, and I'm out. Peace. Enjoy your Mother's Day weekend. Have fun, and love up on them. Peace.